Tonight on The Buzz, we start with Scott Hosfeld. He is the Conductor and Music Director of the award-winning Malibu Coast Chamber Orchestra. He's also a composer for major motion pictures and independent films. Tonight, he shares his thoughts on what it takes to write music for film and television. Then Jonny Videl is the founder and CEO of Callsheet Operator. They've invented a new web-based call sheet for filmmakers. Tonight, he explains his new technology to us. Then Steve Leon is a partner at Showstoppers. They produce media-only events at major trade shows like CES and NAB. Tonight, he shares his thoughts on what it takes to get press coverage for your project. All this and Randi Altman's perspective on the news and Tech Talk. The Buzz starts now.
Tonight's Digital Production Buzz is brought to you by Otherworld Computing at MacSales.com and by Advantage Video Systems at AdvantageVideoSystems.com.
Since the dawn of digital filmmaking,
authoritative.
One show serves a worldwide network of media professionals.
Current.
Uniting industry experts,
Production.
filmmakers,
Post-production.
and content creators around the planet.
Distribution.
From the media capital of the world in Los Angeles, California, the Digital Production Buzz goes live now.
And welcome to the Digital Production Buzz, the world's longest-running podcast for creative content producers covering media production, post-production, and marketing around the world. Mike, the big news this week is tomorrow. Do you know what tomorrow is? Tomorrow is a very special day. Yes, it is.
The big news?
Very special day. You ready? You sitting down?
No, what?
It's our producer Serena's birthday, and if I don't mention that
Oh, my
first, you and I
goodness,
are
really?
both unemployed.
Let me put that down on my calendar so I can send her an email card. Okay.
And happy birthday,
Serena. Yes.
And now, the other big news is GoPro. You know about their new
Yes,
Hero
I saw
4
that thing.
session.
You know that when you were a little kid, you would get these little cube-like things, those 3D, like that's exactly what I thought it was when I first saw it. It was one of those 3D viewers, and it was in a cube kind of thing. It wasn't the other
Viewmaster.
No, yeah, but there was a cube 3D viewer, and that's
I remember
exactly
those.
what it looked like.
But it's
Only
not the
this
same
one's
thing.
$399.
Yes, and it does 100 frame a second 720p, 60 frame a second 1080, and it does 30 frame a second 1440, which is like 2.5K.
And it's waterproof.
And it's $399.
And it's $399. And plus you can put on all those accessories. It's amazing.
Very cool stuff.
I'm sold.
And then,
But it's not 4K. That'll be the next version, 6 months
and
from
it'll be
now.
the size of an ice cube.
And you'll have 8K in about 2008.
And did you were you paying? Was it your fault that the New York Stock Exchange went down?
I thought of you. Not only did the New York Stock Exchange go down, United Airlines went down, and the Wall Street Journal went down all in the same day. And of course, the internet was blowing up with all sorts of terrorist speculation that it was all related and all this stuff. But I thought of you immediately. The cloud, the fragility of the digital age, and you don't trust anything. But let's face it. I mean, all that happening in one day, this is going to happen all the time.
And there was a bad router. There was a bad software update. And the Wall Street Journal seemed to have collapsed.
That's what they told us. And of course, I'm one of those conspiracy people that just probably, the software update. Well, don't they have a way of testing that? But then that happens all the time with Apple and.
Have you ever upgraded your computer and have it not work?
Yes.
And that's just one computer.
Lots of people do that. But you think they'd be a little bit better when you're dealing with the Dow Jones? Anyway, it wasn't that big of a deal for investors, but it was a big deal for the media.
Yeah, a lot of news, especially when you want to fly somewhere and they've canceled the flights everywhere.
But it's going to happen all the time.
Well, we're going to have, and we will keep an eye on it because that's what we do. By the way, you can
just throw your computer away, everybody.
You can join our conversation at Facebook at digitalproductionbuzz.com, and Mike and I will be back with Scott Hosfeld right after Perspective on the News.
Assuming you still have a computer.
With Randi Altman.
This is Randi Altman's Perspective.
Randi Altman has been writing about our industry for the last 20 years. Now she's the editor-in-chief of her own website called postperspective.com. And as always, Randi, it's good to have you back.
Thank you, Larry. Good to be here again.
Randi, the big news this week is GoPro. What have you heard?
Well, they introduced the Session 4, which is teeny tiny. It's 2.6 ounces. It weighs almost nothing. You could put it anywhere. The way that I see it being used is it'll make lives easier for editors. They won't have to try to cut out the camera, or they could just paint it out. It's so small. It's pretty neat.
I'm looking forward to playing with it. It's the size of an ice cube. It's just amazing how tiny that thing is.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing. People were saying that it's almost the size of a lens of the regular Hero 4, the black or the silver. Yeah.
Sort of Scotch tape it on your jacket and you're good to go.
Exactly.
We've moved from production to post. Avid's been making news. What's the word from Avid?
Well, today, the news that they announced at NAB is now a reality. So Media Composer 8.4 is now out there, and they're touting resolution independence. So essentially what you could do now in Media Composer is just type in whatever frame size you want to work in. So you could work from a big feature film all the way down to creating an ad for the local pizza place down the corner. It's a lot more freedom and flexibility.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but both Premiere and Final Cut do this. But Avid is trumpeting this as a big new feature?
Yeah, up until now, they hadn't been able to do it. So it seems, even though they're saying that you could edit in 8K now, they're also offering more flexibility for people working in all different kinds of workflows and jobs. So they've gone up and down market in a sense.
One of the other things that you were talking about last week is your interest in virtual reality. Why do you think VR is not going to be the flash in the pan that stereo 3D is?
Well, I'm hoping it won't be. But the reasons I think it won't be is that you could, your cost of entry is very little. You don't have to spend a lot to get a nice headset where you're really immersed in the atmosphere. You could also take in virtual reality almost anywhere. You know, you pop your iPhone or your mobile device into one of the headsets, and suddenly you could be in the middle of Manhattan. That's my first experience with virtual reality. Was I was in a bar in Manhattan, and life was going on around me, but I was at a Paul McCartney concert, and I was in the Grand Canyon, and it was unbelievable. So to be able to sort of separate yourself from reality in that way is pretty cool. And like I said, the cost of entry is not very high at all. And Jaunt VR, who has a studio in LA and now developed their own camera system for it, they aim to be the Netflix of virtual reality content. So I do believe we're going to be seeing more and more stuff to watch.
So, Randi, what's the lead story on your newsletter today?
I'm not set yet, but I believe it's going to be a review of the Lenovo workstation, the ThinkPad. And Brady Betzel, who is a working editor out there in LA, was kind enough to review it for us.
Very cool. Randi Altman is the editor-in-chief of postperspective.com. Randi, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Larry. Take care.
To read more from Randi Altman, visit postperspective.com. When you're working with media, one thing is essential. Your computer needs peak performance. However, when it comes to upgrading your Mac, there are so many different options to choose from that the process can be confusing. That's why Otherworld Computing carries the best upgrades that lets your computer performance and storage grow as your needs grow. Since 1988, OWC has become one of the most trusted names in quality hardware and comprehensive support to the worldwide computer industry. With an extensive online catalog of Mac, iPhone, and iPad enhancement products, as well as a dedicated team of knowledgeable experts providing first-rate tech support, OWC has everything you need to take your current system to the next level. Whether you need to maximize your system's memory, add blazing speed, or enhance reliability, look no further than the friendly experts at OWC. Learn more by visiting macsales.com today. That's macsales.com.
Scott Hosfeld is the conductor and music director of the award-winning Malibu Coast Chamber Orchestra. He also works with producers, directors, and writers creating music for major motion pictures, independent films, television, and video gaming. He has decades of experience as a conductor, composer, musician, entrepreneur, and an institution builder. Welcome, Scott. Good to have you with us.
Thanks very much. Happy to be
Scott, how old were you when you knew you wanted to be in music?
I think I was about 3 or 4 years old, and my parents had a little thing where I could play their 45 RPM singles, and I would stand down in the basement and sing my head off, and I just loved music from the beginning.
So when was your first paying gig?
Probably truly right when I was in college. I think there was somebody who was recruiting kids to do very off-contract session work with using student labor, and I think I got paid a few times to make some recordings or at least back up for.
Well, I was just looking at your resume. You've been a performer, a composer, a conductor. How do you view yourself? Do you think of yourself as a musician, a composer, conductor, performer? How would you describe it?
I would say I think of myself as a performer, maybe first and foremost. That's what drew me in, the actual hands-on production of music with an instrument in my hands. And then from there, and with a particular focus actually on intimate music making. I always loved chamber music. I liked playing with a handful of people where everybody mattered. And then it grew from there. I spent probably the first 20 years of my career touring with a string quartet all around the country and had various residencies at various universities. And then I kind of ran out of steam with that direction and built a destination chamber music center and school in the mountains of central Washington, a destination music spot, kind of like a miniature Tanglewood or Banff.
So your principal instrument is what?
Viola is my main instrument, although I would call myself equally a violinist. I, by happenstance, ended up playing viola for those 20 years in a string quartet, so I kind of got used to it.
So when we talk, because I'm a little ignorant here on chamber music, when we talk chamber, are we talking about just a few instruments, a few people versus a full orchestra?
Exactly.
And what instruments are we talking about?
So a string quartet, a formal string quartet, is 2 violins, viola, and cello. And it's led me so much into the direction I've come to now with media, simply because a lot of composers put a lot of their best efforts, channeled a tremendous amount of energy and creativity into writing for that particular combination. And so you have groups, I was one of them, that toured all over to people that particularly like that form. It's a little bit like seeing a really great rock band because everybody in it you can identify as a personality, and they're all contributing their energy towards making music. Unlike in a symphony orchestra where you're sort of encouraged to be a blender and a conformer, and the real star is the conductor.
Which gets me to the Malibu Coast Chamber Orchestra that you're a conductor for. Tell me about this.
Well, my wife and I, her name is Maria Newman. She comes from the Newman family, the Alfred Randy, Thomas
family?
David,
the Randy
L.A. family. Began to do a series of concerts in Malibu in our home in 2005. And we sort of dreamed of the idea of having really outstanding musicians, of which there are endless amounts in Los Angeles.
I bet.
And but this particular group was made out of people who could play in the orchestra, but also any one of them could be a soloist. Anybody of them could be a leader. And so, again, it's a little bit the same in that we draw energy from people who have a real reason to be there, and it creates a unique kind of orchestra where everybody kind of pulls their own weight, and maybe as conductor I tend to guide as much as anything the wonderful expression that comes out of people that feel important in their role in the orchestra rather than as just sort of cogs.
But there's a big difference between being a performer, even in something as visible as a string quartet, and conducting. What was it that made you step out from the ranks and stand in front of the group and take all the slings and arrows?
Oh, good question. I always liked conducting. I started doing it when I was in college and conservatory in New York. We founded and established the International House Chamber Orchestra, which was made up of Manhattan School of Music and Juilliard students. And it was a string orchestra, but I stepped in many, many times and conducted, and always liked the feeling, like I said, of guiding the efforts rather than controlling. So you take people that have a lot of energy, allow them to develop a relationship with one another in terms of the music, and then hopefully just guide that in a way that makes it the most effective.
You know, every time I go to, especially a classical concert and watch the conductors, nobody's looking at the conductor. They're all looking at their music sheets. And so I always wonder, what's the conductor there for? I mean, if nobody's paying attention to this guy, occasionally they'll glance up, occasionally he's pointing over here, occasionally he's doing this thing with his hand. What does the conductor do? You say guide, but is it out of the peripheral? Again, ignorant question, I know, but that's one of the things I don't understand.
A great orchestra like the LA Phil can probably play their way through something really without a conductor for the most part. But it is the shaping of the music, bringing the vision, especially to a large orchestra. But that
shaping happens before they actually perform?
Yes, a lot of it. A lot of it happens in rehearsal. Right. So you might have 3 or 4 rehearsals prior to that concert or set of concerts where you kind of work things out. But the music's not memorized, and people are accustomed to reading. But trust me, there's a peripheral sense of that energy coming from the conductor. And of course, we all know that there are better and worse conductors. So sometimes it pays to ignore the conductor, and then sometimes it doesn't. But but as somebody who's dynamic and brings vision or excitement or energy to the performance is really making a difference.
Which gets me to the third thing that's keeping you busy. In addition to performing and conducting, you also write music. And you write music for film and for television. It seems like anything that needs music, you've got it written for. Who are some of the projects you've written music for?
Well, what I do is, and I don't claim to be specifically a composer, although I've composed a lot. But I usually work in conjunction with a composer who has perhaps a background similar to mine in classical or in small music forms. And what we try to do is to bring that sort of expensive sense of great sound or acoustic music to projects, whether they're large or small. And over the course of the years, I've worked in many, many ways with lots and lots of well-known people. Of course, like I mentioned, the almost the entire Newman family. We've collaborated with one way or another. Marco Beltrami, Hans Zimmer, John Debney, just a huge array of people that we work alongside in a collaborative way.
Well, we've got a couple clips, and I want to play a music clip to give us a sense of what your music sounds like. We've got 2 radically different styles, and then I want to have you describe sort of what the use of these was. So let's play the first audio clip. Now, that's but a small piece of a larger project, but tell me about that one.
Okay, so the actual cue was drawn from a piece that was actually written by my wife, Maria Newman, and it was a concert piece, but we used it in a film called Heaven's Rain by director Brooks Douglas, and it was a courtroom, it was the Oklahoma State House of Representatives. And the hero of this particular film is standing up to introduce a very important piece of legislation. He's a junior senator, and is, initially it opens the scene, and it's also used later when this particular bill passes, even though all the senior senators in the thing had opposed him. So,
all right, let's try a second clip, which is a totally different texture piece. Let's listen to it, and then I want to talk about the process of how you went about composing these. But let's play the second clip. So tell us about that one.
Well, interesting that of the ones I provided, these are both actually from the same film. Also, this was an adaptation of similar music by Maria Newman. What it was music that went against picture, or so the mood of the music is kind of serene, but the actual scene is of the hero who has been, both mentally and physically injured in a very, very graphic way. But he's healed, but he's working out the demons, and he's actually punching this punching bag and having these flashbacks. And so it's sort of a serene background, but kind of eerie and intense that backs up this scene where he's punching and punching and punching and working out his demons.
So how do you write a piece of music? You're handed the script. You've probably got the rough cut of the film, pretty close to locked for time. What process do you go through?
What I try to do, and this is where I feel like my advantage in being a musician comes to play, because I think that when you play a lot and you talk a lot, you discuss music, whether you're a conductor or a performer, you develop language to describe things that are not really supposed to be described in words. And so I feel that when I see something, I am very in touch with the color or the mood or the feeling of the scene, or in the case of the last cue, kind of the opposite. Like how do you frame something in a way that draws emotion from that? Because it's easy to, if it's a violent scene, it's easy to be violent. So I'm looking for a direction, and then what I try to do is then come up with a texture that fits that scene. So, if it's warm and tender, I think of strings or something, that can embrace. But, but of course the texture of something that's more noble would have fit the first cue. It was like about the courtroom and about seriousness and drama. And so I try to interpret a feeling first, and then either create or paint with, music that I've worked with, something that is seamlessly works with that scene.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, you're dealing a lot with budget, obviously. I mean, especially in those small films where they can only afford a certain amount of instruments, a certain amount of people, and especially when you're dealing with like a choral arrangement that you just did here. There's only a certain amount of people. What can you choose within the constraints of the budget? I mean, that stuff sounds absolutely wonderful, but is it expensive?
What you were hearing is expensive. I mean, the brass players are, I would consider the A-list brass players in Los Angeles were playing that. So that is expensive. But part of it is that small amounts of people can make a huge difference. So I've worked with composers many, many times on writing or developing a chamber score, which has, nowadays you can mic things so brilliantly and bring things to life with just a handful of voices. And if each one of those has a commitment, or you can take something that is use modern technology and use samples and use those things to begin with, and then overlay something real over the top of it, and all of a sudden it has a deeply dramatic and again, that expensive feel without an expensive budget.
So me as an independent filmmaker, I can come to you and hire you, maybe?
Yes, you sure
and
can.
You would,
yes.
You and I would share the same budget perception?
Yes, yeah. And that's really important, because you start off with that. And a lot of times what happens with films is that, a new filmmaker or a filmmaker gets really excited about their film and kind of forgets that music often is the part that, kind of ties it together emotionally. Yeah. And we'll sit on a scoring stage and you're watching the film without music, and boy, it's just, it's such a empty experience until that
we
comes
need
in.
to bring you back and have you walk us through the process of composing.
I can't.
Where can people go on the web to learn about the orchestra? What website?
Well, that would be the MalibuFriendsOfMusic.org.
MalibuFriendsOfMusic.org. And how about your own website?
And that would be ScottHosfeld.com.
That's all one word,
ScottHosfeld.com.
It's always reassuring when he can spell his own website. Scott Hosfeld is the conductor
So many more questions
and founder of the Malibu Coast Orchestra. Scott, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. My
Thank you,
pleasure.
Scott.
Thank you. All right.
Jeff Stansfield started Advantage Video Systems in 2001, providing solutions for broadcast equipment and system integration, digital asset management, direct attached storage, and much more. Advantage Video Systems can integrate all of your equipment wherever you might need in your studio, office, classroom, or data center, and they can extend their services into a global support package. Their designers, editors, and technicians will help you achieve your competitive and creative goals. As Jeff always says, they truly want to make your entire day perfect. Visit Advantage Video Systems online at AdvantageVideoSystems.com or call toll-free at 800-287-5095. Advantage Video Systems, putting creative technology to work for you. Jonny Videl is the founder and CEO of Callsheet Operator, which is a web-based management app designed to replace printed or PDF call sheets. Hello, Jonny. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's good to have you with us. How would you describe what a call sheet is?
Call sheet is a master document and schedule for the day. Lists all the crew members and the crew list, and also what the schedule is, what you're going to be shooting that day, and specifics and details.
Well, call sheets have been printed or typed since the beginning of time. Why bother to create something new?
Sure. So when I entered the film industry, I was actually shocked at how much of it was outdated. Like you said, they've been around forever, and they've been done the same way for forever. So with all the technology in place, with mobile and digital, the internet, all these things that people have at their disposal today, we decided to upgrade the whole technology, make it web-based. And there's a couple different reasons for that. Going green is one of them, most important. It also makes the workflow easier, and it also makes the workflow easier on the actual production manager, the production teams, and they have a lot of more important things to worry about.
So you've invented something called Callsheet Operator. Tell me what that is.
Sure. So Callsheet Operator is it's a tool, it's a web-based tool that we use, and there's a couple different applications for it. The first is creating a call sheet. So you upload your contacts to our system, and it will autofill for you, very much like Google suggests when you type in Google. So when you type in Larry, L-A, it'll auto-suggest the rest of your name, Jordan, and autofill your correct information. From there, it will also mass email, text, and voice the entire document and the location app or any other NDAs and documents you have with that to the entire crew for you, the press of one button. It also tracks that document, so you can see who's opened it, who's viewed it. It also includes digital confirmation, so you can confirm with the document instead of doing, old school calling people up and verbally confirming or requiring that they respond to you through email. And the last valuable asset to Callsheet Operator is actually making the call sheet, instead of a boring old PDF, we made it interactive. So when you open it on your mobile phone, you can actually call the numbers by clicking on them, or add a contact by clicking on your name. You can see the weather. You can dial out. You can email. There's lots of applications for it.
I was doing some homework getting ready for this interview, and without even having to break a sweat, I found Pocket and Film Touch and Doodle Pro also offering call sheets. What makes you special?
Sure. So, yes, the Pocket, those are somewhat in the same vein in terms of dealing with call sheets, but they do things a little bit different. I believe Pocket Call Sheet just stores as a database your call sheets. And I think Doodle also has a call sheet application, but we work in very different ways. What sets us apart, to my knowledge, is we're the only ones who are doing digital call sheets, interactive call sheets, in the terms of being able to actually interact with the exact document, and the only one that actually does the follow-up through mass text, email, voice messaging with digital opt-in, so people can opt in automatically.
Back when I was an actor, back a long time ago.
Did they have paper back then?
No, we'd actually get sent the call. We'd actually get sent the call sheets by courier the night before we would go to the set. Now, there are a lot of actors today, especially in their 70s, who do not own a computer and still rely on the call sheet. What is happening? What is happening nowadays with people like that who are Luddites or don't have a computer?
Sure. So it's actually a very small percentage in this.
Yeah, I realize that, but there are those people exist. Really, they do.
They definitely do. With our system, you're able to take care of most of the crew, and at the end of the day, there will be a couple stragglers, maybe one or two or three, but it expedites the process and weeds them out. So instead of going through the whole crew and cast list manually and calling everybody, confirming an email, you can kind of set the follow-up feature for you, so it follow up with them through each channel, digital, email, text, and voice. And at the end of the day, you'll have, like you said, a couple stragglers. Well, you will have to pick up the phone for them, but instead of calling 100 people, you're going to call 3.
Right.
Jonny,
so you are the assistant director's dream.
Jonny, I just realized that you not only run Callsheet Operator, but you founded the company. What was it that made you decide there was a market here, and why start a company?
Sure, absolutely. So I've been working in film myself. My entire team does I've been in the business roughly about 5 or 6 years, camera assistant by day. And working inside of it, I realized that there was just a lot of problems. And there are solutions that you mentioned, and a couple that you didn't. And what I found with those solutions is they weren't utilizing the technology in the right way, number one. And number two, a lot of them were trying to do too much, right? They want you to do everything inside your system. So what we focused on was solving very specific problems and points very specifically from the inside out, since we know them so well. And this is just the first app of our company. Our company is actually called Cineo, CINIO. And we'll be following additionally products in the future. But this is the first one we're launching with because this is the most painful one that we found.
And how do people access it, and how do you put data into it? Just tell me how it works.
Sure. So it's mostly web-based. So you will need an internet connection, which again is pretty common these days. Even if you're shooting on location, they usually bring a satellite phone or something with you. To upload the contacts, you can do that through your address book. You just kind of spit out a CSV file and then upload it to the system if you want. And if you don't want to, that's absolutely fine also. You also have a paste in feature where you can just copy your existing call sheet already done into Callsheet Operator and skip the first module and go right into the contacts where it will follow up for you through email, text, and voice, and give you analytics on the tracking to the messages, see who's opted in, see who hasn't, see which channel they've opted in through, and then spit out the call sheet for you at the end.
So is this a FileMaker kind of database-based software?
It can be, but it doesn't have to be necessarily. We kind of made it user-friendly because we know, especially with production managers, everyone has their own workflow, right?
Yeah.
Not that many very people like to learn a new thing or to change their workflow, which is what we found.
That was going to be my next question. You don't want anybody to have to learn something. You want it to be absolutely intuitive and easy to learn or easy to use.
Exactly. And that was kind of our parameters when we created. We didn't want to change anybody's workflow. We just wanted to help them through the process by using our system. So we're not changing the existing workflow. You're still creating a call sheet the same way. You're still using a call sheet the same way. You're still sending out a call sheet. We just use technology to kind of aid all those things. So you're going to make a call sheet faster. You're going to distribute it a lot faster and cleaner. No group messages, no CCs, no asking for responses. And at the end of it, you'll have an interactive document that's actually useful instead of a PDF where you can't really do anything with it.
Cool.
Jonny, how much does this cost?
We're currently working on pricing right now, but we will have a freemium model, and we will have a studio price that goes all the way up to, I believe, about $100 or $200. But we do have a freemium model for indie and filmmakers, and we're working on keeping it as low as possible in cost. But what it costs in monetary value, it makes up in time. So instead of spending hours creating a call sheet, it can be done literally in minutes. Instead of spending hours following up with crew members, again, it can literally be done in minutes or set up to run on its own all day. And same thing with the tracking and analytics. It's kind of foolproof, and it's a double security for the production manager, because we all know that once you get yelled at when somebody doesn't show up to set. So you can look at the metrics and say, well, I know you opened the document because it's timestamped. It says you opened it and you read it, but you didn't confirm it. So it's kind of back on another person.
Now, you said that you're still working on price. It sounds like you're in a soft launch right now as opposed to up to full speed. Is that true?
Correct. We're currently in beta with our core group of early acceptors that we're running with, and we're getting feedback from them. We actually built it alongside them. So we didn't just make this app with what we thought would be great. We actually interviewed, we spent about a year, this has been going on since about 2013. We first started in the winter of 2013 and really started interviewing everybody, getting consensus, get feedback the entire way along. And now we're getting feedback on the actual physical software.
Are you looking for more testers?
Oh, yes, all the time. We have a website. Yeah, we're definitely looking for more testers across different genres. So we have a commercial team. We have people in the indie world. We even have some people through live events and musicians in that terms, or features and films. So anybody that can really, give us a clear opinion, especially somebody who works a lot, somebody who's busy, somebody who does this all day. We're working with second ADs, first ADs, production managers, coordinators, producers, you name it.
So where do you want to take this? Is this the start of the suite of products you're going to be coming out with? And if so, what do you see the direction that you're headed?
Sure, absolutely. So it will be somewhat of a suite, but not in terms of like an Adobe suite where it's all in one. So the products will be standalone, but they also will be able to work together. But you don't have to buy them all at once or use them all at once. But we're focusing on specifically film production management and that space, because that is the last to the game, kind of. They're the ones who are lacking. There's editing software, there's scheduling software, there's budgeting software, but there's no real software to take care of the menial, boring data entry tasks that we all can automate. Our second product will be coming out very shortly, actually, in August 1st. And then we plan on doing a couple other very specific niche software solutions as time progresses. So again, we're going to focus on very specific problems. We don't want everybody to do everything in our system, right? We don't want to change workflows. We don't want to make things difficult on the people using it. So that's really our goal, is to make user-friendly, very simple, obviously affordable solutions that solve very specific problems.
And the website for people that want to learn more is all one word, callsheetoperator.com. And Jonny Videl is the founder and CEO of Callsheet Operator. Jonny, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Take care.
Sounds
Bye-bye.
great.
What is the challenge, aside from just the volume involved? What's the challenge in preserving digital records?
Well, the enormity of it, just as you mentioned, millions and millions of digital objects for some institutions. And not just that, but the huge variety of records, the different types, not just email, but office documents and sound recordings and video files and databases and geographic information systems. I could go on for a long time.
This is Tech Talk from the Digital Production Buzz.
This is a typical presenter pose, square to the camera. Notice the size of her head, relationship to the shoulders. It's okay, but it's boring. What I want you to do instead is I want you to turn your body and point your knees toward the ladder and spin. See, there you go. A little too much. I'm going to get you there, but not yet. Okay, now cut back to camera 2. Look at how much more interesting this is. When we start to put her shoulders at an angle, what it does is it diminishes the width of her body and emphasizes the size of her head, not to make it swell, but your eye looks at that which is largest or brightest or most dominant in the frame, which is her head by definition. Now watch what happens. We're going to stay with camera 2. Spin your body a little bit more, just a little too right about there. And now, there you go. This is like a fashion photographer where your head is twisted so much over your shoulder that you're like looking over your back. There we go. Now, the head is dominant. You have to look at her face because the shoulders have receded into virtually nothing. It's a straight line receding from the camera. So it depends upon what you're emphasizing. If you want to emphasize the face, then you spin the body so that the shoulders are more at an angle. If you want to emphasize the body, then you spin so that she's sitting square. Okay? Now, cut back to Dennis. Trade places, Andrew and Cynthia. Now, we can take this one step farther. Let's have Drew do the same thing, but I want to have him talk about a newscaster pose, which for some reason works much better with guys than with girls. So let's zoom back out here. Square to the camera first to start with. And again, now this could be a mug shot. It could be, Ooh, look at that frown. Oh, my goodness. This is happy news. There we go. Much better. Now, rotate your body in the same direction that we did with Cynthia. And again, notice how this is a much more pleasing shot. There was a newscaster in New York that made this next shot famous. His name is Tom Snyder in WNBC New York. And what he did is he took this whole concept to an entirely different level. I want you to spin, cut back to camera 2. Look at that shot. Drop your right shoulder just a bit more, lean in a bit more, push, push, push. There you go, right there. How can you not pay attention to that shot? His body has essentially disappeared. His shoulders are at such an extreme angle. He is leaning forward. His head dominates the frame. This is like body on the river, shoes on the bridge, film at 11. This is a most incredible way of dealing with the camera because you are forcing the viewer to pay absolute, complete attention because the presenter is totally dominating the frame. Andrew, relax. Nice job.
This Tech Talk was shared from Larry Jordan's website at larryjordan.com.
Steve Leon is a partner in Showstoppers. Now in its 22nd year, Showstoppers creates media events for selected press analysts and key executives that are designed to generate news coverage, product reviews, promote brands, and open new markets. Showstoppers produces events at CES, CTIA, Mobile World Congress, NAB, and many other venues. Hello, Steve. Welcome.
All right. Thanks for coming in.
We are delighted to have you with us. Tell us about Showstoppers. What is it and why did it start?
Oh, man, we started 22 years ago with a very simple premise. I worked for a small PR agency. I compared notes with a couple of other agencies where we all had 3 or 4 clients each at a trade show that no longer exists called Comdex.
Oh, yeah.
And we had a small problem. We had clients in 3 different buildings up and down the Vegas Strip, and we had appointments with journalists for each of those clients. And we hit on the idea of putting all of those companies in one place at one time, bring in some food, bring in some drink, and let the companies demonstrate their products and see how many journalists we could collect for 2 or 3 hours. And that turned into a business. It's now 22 years later.
What's your role with the company?
I'm sorry, say again?
What's your role with the company?
I am one of 3 business partners. I am the partner who is responsible for inviting the press, registering the press, talking with journalists, which is why I'm doing this interview. And I am also involved very heavily in business development. There are 2 other partners. Both happen to be my brothers. Bob is responsible for our logistics, the hotel room or other site that we use, the menu, the power, the lighting, things like that. The second other partner is Dave, and he is responsible for sales and also for business development.
Well, I was just reflecting, Mike and I were chatting about this before the show. There's so much competition for attention from the press and from individual users. How do you break through? How do you get people, how do you get the press to pay attention to your event? And then 2, how do you get end users to pay attention once the press is there?
Well, you know what? Let me turn the question around. How many trade shows have you been to? And what happens when 30 companies call you up and ask for interview slots and time slots? You know, what do you do? We think the Showstoppers format is far more cost-effective, time-effective for everybody involved. And, you know, the idea that you can do business, look at new products, put your hands on them for 2 hours, 3 hours, depending on the event, and you walk out at the end of the evening with a stack of business cards, leads to coverage, leads to product that you want to review on air or in publication. You know, how valuable is your time? You can see 20, 30 companies in an hour at a Showstoppers event, instead of walking up and down the trade show aisles for 3 days. We think that's a formula that works.
One of the things that we do, and we make a big point of covering NAB, is that we'll do live programming from the show floor, and we'll talk to anywhere from 40 to 60 on-air interviews during an NAB show, and we present them in periods of 7 to 10-minute interviews apiece. So our format is live broadcast. What is, when you say the showstoppers format, what's that?
At its simplest, it is a large room, typically a ballroom, at a hotel. The Wynn, for example, in Vegas, or one of the exhibit halls at IFA in Berlin. And we fill the space with companies that have new products to launch, new products to demonstrate, a reason to talk with the press, and we set up tables. We run power to the tables, we bring in food, we bring in drink, and we open up the doors. We spend a lot of time prior to the event working with each of the companies that is exhibiting, sending out the invitations to the press, building a press list, things like that. The event is typically 2 or 3 hours. CES is a longer event. That's a 4-hour event for us. That's our largest event. We have typically 1,800 journalists in the room, typically 130 companies exhibiting. We've done smaller events with as few as 10 companies and 100 journalists. The idea is that as a journalist, you can meet with 10 companies, 30 companies, 50 companies, 130 companies, and put your hands on the product, get a demonstration from somebody who knows that product intimately and well, can explain that product to you, can walk you through the benefits, the advantages, how it differs from something that may already be out on the market. And then you understand the product well enough that you can do that coverage. At NAB, for example, which is I think where I last saw you guys, I think we had 30 companies in the room. I think that was 500 journalists for that event, and that was a 3-hour event. That was a large ballroom inside the convention center at Mandalay Bay, I think. Vegas gets confusing because we do 3 events there a year.
Well, Steve, hold it a second, because I want to come back to something. It sounds to me like the developers are your clients and the press is your audience. And
yes.
If that's true, what advice do you give to your clients, the people that have products to sell, to help them maximize their contact with the press? And the ultimate reason is to help our listeners understand what they need to know to work better with the press.
Oh, boy. There's a series of long answers. If doing PR for a tech company, hardware, software, devices, internet services, any of those, the best thing you can do with a product, with a new product that you are launching, is demonstrate that to a journalist one-on-one, face-to-face. And there is nothing like being in the room with that journalist for those 5 minutes, for those 10 minutes, for the hour, whatever it is. That just gets rid of a lot of the resistance. It eliminates confusion. It clarifies the communication channel. Much more work gets done that much more quickly, that much more effectively in a shorter amount of time. If you're a journalist, your time is valuable. You're on deadline. You've got to get things figured out, written up, and on the air. If you're the marketer for that product, for that company, you want to figure out how to reach as many journalists as you can as quickly as possible. You can spend a week on the road, traveling from office to office, flying around the country, or you can put yourself in a room full of journalists who have already been qualified as people that you want to shake hands with, and you're done in 2 hours.
Are these companies that are at Showstoppers, are they also on the show floor, or are they just at Showstoppers?
That's a mix. At some events at CES, for example, Those companies are, some of them are on the show floor, some of them are not. At IFA, where we produce the official press event, that's the event in Berlin, those companies must exhibit on the show floor. That is, in part, that is the way we work with Messe Berlin, which runs the IFA trade show.
You've been doing this now for 22 years, and it sounds like you're working with smaller companies to give them a chance to break through and become visible, as opposed to the Sonys and the really large companies of the world. How have your exhibitors changed over time?
Well, first, let me go back a step. We have large companies in the room like HP and Microsoft and Samsung. You can't get any bigger than those. And we are known for bringing smaller startups into the room that journalists have never heard of, never discovered, and this is their foot in the door. How has this changed over time? Go back to my reference to Comdex. That's a trade show that doesn't exist any longer. But that is the trade show that turned technology into consumer electronics, into the Internet of Things, which is where we seem to be moving at this point. The technology evolves over time. The way it is delivered over time changes. And, you know, I can't predict for you where we will be at CES in January 2016, which products are going to be flying around the room like a quadcopter, or which cameras are going to be shooting video, and in what format. But I know that I will have them in the room, and I know that I will have large companies doing those demonstrations, and I will have small companies that nobody's ever heard of before doing those demonstrations.
How does a small company approach you and convince you that you need to invite them to the event?
Please contact me.
No, but what I'm saying is, do you have criteria, or do they have to audition, or is it just a question of paying the fee?
It's a combination thing. You know, obviously we want to get paid for this. It's a business, right? That said, I am much more interested in companies that have a really good story to tell. Because if you're a journalist, if you walk into a Showstoppers event and you're bored and you've seen all of these companies before and you've seen all of these products before, you'll walk out of that room thinking that you wasted your 2 hours. If, on the other hand, I've got 30 companies in the room, some of those companies you've never heard of before, and they've got something that is relevant to what you cover, you're going to be fascinated. You're going to want to spend time at my event. Now, how I find those companies, we do a lot of marketing, we do a lot of outreach, we have a website, we have email newsletters, we have word of mouth, we have friends who introduce us, we take introductions, you know, by email, by telephone, all the time. We are happy to have the door knocked on. It is a process.
So diversity is really important to a show like Showstoppers, correct?
Yeah, and you know, look at what you cover. You know, I know you mentioned NAD most recently, right? We're talking film, video, on-air production, devices to do those kind of things. That's different from what happens at Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. That's different from what happens at IFA or CES, which is much more about consumer electronics, but it will still have devices. It will still have mobile. It will still have video and audio and software tools, but the mix, the focus of those changes from event to event.
Any particular company in the, say, the last 10 years that you have introduced to the world that has changed the world?
Oh, man, that's a tough question. I have a personal interest in... Let me go back a step. I am in the process now of remodeling a house. Mm-hmm. I'm not physically doing the labor. I have, you know, a builder doing the work for me. But I have a personal interest in not what I would call home automation, but smarter home.
Sure.
So at CES, for example, I took time to meet with one of the exhibitors in the room. It's a company called Sengled, S-E-N-G-L-E-D. They have an LED light bulb, but it's not just a light bulb. It has It has an intercom microphone built in.
Oh, jeez.
It connects to your router, and it has a motion sensor, and it has I think it's a 180-degree camera
Oh
on
my
it.
gosh.
So I can put one of these things at my front door, and I don't need a doorbell anymore. Right?
All right.
So,
you sold me. I'll take that.
So I've got personal interest in things like that.
Yeah.
That said, if I've got at CES 1,800 journalists in the room, I can guarantee you that there are 1,800 different news beats, and I could not predict who's going to be interested in any one of the companies in the room different from any one of the other companies in the room.
That's true.
Well, I'm interested in that LED light bulb.
Steve, where can people go on the web to learn more about you and your company?
Showstoppers.com, SHOWSTOPPERS.com.
That's all one word, showstoppers.com. And Steve Leon is a partner of Showstoppers. Steve, I'm really curious to see what the next hot product is at your shows, and I wish you great success. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. And if I could predict that, I wouldn't be in this business. I'd be really rich.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Get the digital production buzz at one of those tables.
We should get there and get the press to talk to the press. I think we've got a story to tell.
Are you kidding me?
They would talk to you.
Huge.
They would queue up just to see you.
Front page of New York Times the next day.
People would say, "I met Mike Horton."
It would crash the Wall Street Journal.
which has already happened. I don't think anybody would be interested anymore because it's been done.
Well, we'll do something big.
But I love his last line. If I could predict what the future was going to hold, I'd be rich.
Yep.
But it's definitely going to be different than today. That's for sure.
Yep.
It's been a pretty interesting show. We started with classical music and writing
so many
film
more
score.
questions for that guy.
Yeah,
we're going to have to. You and I are going to have to go to Malibu, do a picnic. You must do it outdoors, right? They don't have anything indoors.
Just to hear the orchestra. I love chamber music. So
do you?
Oh yeah, that's when I'm sitting and writing my newsletter. I
love choral music.
That's true too.
I do, and we should mention James Horner. Oh God, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful film composer. Just died just last week. He was like the composer of my childhood. Mm-hmm. Well, not my childhood, my middle life. Can't remember. I keep forgetting how old I am. But he always infused a lot of choral with electronic, and it was just.
And the Titanic was one of his.
That was one of his movies.
Yeah, it was a beautiful score. I want to thank our guests for today. We started with Scott Hosfeld, the music director of the Malibu Coast Chamber Orchestra, Jonny Videl, founder and CEO of Callsheet Operator, and Steve Leon, the partner at Showstoppers. There's a lot of history in our industry, and it's all posted to our website at digitalproductionbuzz.com.
And you know what? We've covered it all. We've covered it all.
You know, we've done more than
years.
It's been 8 years, and
we've covered the entire history. There isn't any more history to cover.
1,500 interviews. So all we can do is cover the future.
That's it.
I mean, Michael, you and I live.
You want the history? Just go back to the archive.
Michael lives 6 months in the future. That's where we can find him. Just we look and there's his trail. You'll find hundreds of past shows and thousands of interviews, and Michael being cheerful.
It's going to be awesome.
You can visit with us on Twitter.
Use the press.
You can hush up
Call
now.
this guy.
We can do DP Buzz at Twitter, digitalproductionbuzz.com. On Facebook, our music composed by Nathan Doogie Turner, additional music by Smart Sound.
We should get this guy.
Our producer is Serena Catania, engineering team led by Megan Paulos, Ed Golia, Keegan Guy, and Josh Kay. On behalf of the mouth over there, my name's Larry Jordan. Mike Horton, thanks for listening to The Buzz.
Goodbye, everybody.
The Digital Production Buzz was brought to you by Otherworld Computing, providing quality hardware solutions and extensive technical support to the worldwide computer industry since 1988. And by Advantage Video Systems, who provide professional and integrated video and data solutions to post-production houses, broadcast facilities, as well as corporate, educational, and government institutions.